is one of the things that triggers me. These pet buttons.
A viral online phenomenon claims to have further opened the door to human-canine communication. Pre-recorded buttons that allow dogs to seemingly talk with their humans.
But are all these button enthusiasts barking up the wrong tree?
I like to play ball. I like Purple Bird in the window.
Stella's dog mom is Christina Hunger. She's a speech pathologist who got the idea for these.
I hate this. I hate this so much. When they have rows and rows of buttons with little words on them, there is nothing I hate more.
Dog buttons after working with nonverbal children, where she'd often use a tablet to assist them in communicating.
At the same time, I brought a puppy home.
Your dog is not learning concepts and attaching them to words like a human brain does. As a person who has learnt a lot about human psychology and how it interacts with language, your dog is not doing that. That puppy is very cute, don't get me wrong. But what they're not doing is learning how to communicate with you.
It was just bursting with communication, which led me to the question if
Yes!
dogs
Through body language! That's what they use to communicate with you.
can understand words we say to them, why can't they say words back? What if they had a different way to talk, similar to kids who use devices?
Human children learn human language from the very moment they're born. And you can tell that they're evolutionarily wired to do this. Yes, I believe humans are evolutionarily wired to do a few very specific things. And one of those few very specific things is language. And you can tell that human children are wired to use language and learn language. You know why? Because kids, toddlers, they will ask you fucking questions to the point that it gets annoying. They will ask you questions constantly. They'll be like, Mummy, what's that? Daddy, what's that? What they're trying to do constantly is extract information out of your brain. Your dog and your cat is not doing that. And you know what? That's fine. Because they weren't evolved to do that. And you should accept that. Your dog and your cat is not your human child. And they never will be.
For my dog Macy, that could be
Go for a walk?
or
Want a treat?
and then every time I do that action in the course of a day, I press the button. And with enough repetition, the hope is that someday Macy would push that button to communicate back with me.
That never happens. Your dog will hear you say a word and it will associate that word with a thing. That happens. What they cannot do is associate words with concepts in the same way that you do. They'll never be able to do that. The only way in which they'll ever associate words is associating a sound of a word with a thing that will get them something that they want from you, i.e. food, or if it's a treat that they want and it's like a sort of trick that they have to perform in order to get a treat from you, they will learn that, but they will never understand what a word actually means within context or within the context of other things. You might tell your dog to roll over, but your dog won't understand what rolling over actually means within context of other things. Like, it might understand in some very reductive way that if it goes on its back and then twists over, that's like a thing that will get it a treat. But it won't understand that, say, you put a sausage on the ground and then roll it over. It won't understand in the same way that that sausage is rolling over in the same way that the dog rolled over. That is what human children can do. They can eventually understand the concept of rolling. A dog cannot understand the concept of rolling. It will understand the sound of the word roll, and if it does this thing when it hears the sound of roll, and then if it does the thing and then gets a treat, it will understand that action. I shouldn't call it a concept. It will understand that action in relation to that sound of that word What a child will eventually be able to do is understand the concept of rolling, i.e., I can roll over, but so can a sausage or this toy or anything can actually roll over. Dogs, animals cannot do that. They don't understand language in terms of concepts in the way that we can. And that's why when they're pressing these buttons, they're not understanding them in the same way that humans do.
Hunger spent weeks demonstrating her buttons for Stella with no results. She was about to call it quits when Stella seemed to get it.
She just started looking at the button and looking up at me, or she would actually swat and miss it.
You're so close, Stella.
And that's when I knew that there was some potential here, and I kept going with teaching. And then a week later, she said her first word outside.
Hunger's blog and her social media videos have drawn millions of viewers, including cognitive scientist Rosano, who was skeptical.
Outside. I was like,
Thing is, like, when you watch these videos, though, they're always pressing some button which just happens to be close to where their paw was anyway, or it's close to where their human is. They're so clearly only pressing these buttons because they're trying to get attention from their owners, and they're doing whatever they can to get attention, and they know that if they press one of these stupid word buttons, they will get attention from their owner. And if they don't press one of the buttons, their owner will ignore them. And I think that's the worst thing about all of this, is that these animals feel that they have to press one of these buttons to get their human to pay some attention to them. I think that is the saddest thing.
There's one dog doing it, and that's great, but we know that there's a history of trying to communicate with animals, and that history was a little complicated.
That history includes a horse named Clever Hans.
Clever Hans basically started this whole thing off. So this horse called Clever Hans essentially wowed audiences because everybody thought that this horse could do maths. So this horse's owner would say 2 + 4, and you can see the abacus there. He would stand in front of an audience and tell his horse, do 2 + 4. And the horse would, I've forgotten how he would do it, but he would somehow step out 6. But it turned out that all the horse had learnt was how to respond to his owner's body language in a very intuitive way. That is evidence for the very sort of close relationship that humans and animals can create, which is actually very amazing in itself. But it's not language. It's not language. It's body language. When Hans was counting up to 6, as this is the answer to 2 + 4, Hans's owner would do some sort of body language which would signal to Hans that 6 was enough and you don't need to go any further. And Hans would stop when Hans could recognize that his owner was signaling that was enough. And because it was discovered that whenever Hans was with any other human, Hans could not do the same thing. Hans just couldn't do maths anymore when he wasn't with his owner.
Turns out Hans was just picking up subtle cues from his handler. But the buttons and the people and dogs who use them kept growing in popularity.
See, this is the most famous dog that's got famous for supposedly learning what all of these buttons mean. Bunny does not know what any of these buttons mean.
iDog, we friend, yeah! I had no business teaching my dog how to talk.
Doesn't mean anything. iDog, we friend.
She says after 6 years of steady work, Bunny now knows over 100 words, and she claims uses them in novel ways.
I think one of the most powerful moments was when she had a foxtail embedded in the webbing between
I've heard this story before, and I hate it.
her paws. So she went over to her board and she pressed mad ouch. And I said, where is your ouch? And she pressed stranger paw. So she had used stranger in a way that I had never modeled it, stranger being something foreign.
So basically, her dog Bunny pressed ow, paw, stranger paw. And she found out later that Bunny had a thorn stuck in her paw. And she understood that as an amazing revelation that Bunny could speak English because Bunny could understand the concept of object. Stranger, as in like the thorn, was a stranger that ended up embedded in the paw.
So she had used stranger in a way that I had never modeled it, stranger being something foreign object.
Videos like this went crazy online. Over 8 million people follow Bunny and Divine on TikTok. She's now written a book.
Sells her own brand of dog buttons. Guys, why didn't I just do this with Brooklyn? Brooklyn, why didn't we just do this? We could have just scammed everyone. We could have just scammed everyone. Huh? We could have just pretended that you understand English. We could have just pretended that.
Of button boards, and has inspired millions more to try them. Cats, otters, and even pot-bellied pigs are now experimenting with the buttons.
What amazes me is the confirmation bias of the whole thing. What humans love to do is project human traits onto animals. And when we have that extra layer of human words via buttons at our disposal, oh man, we start having so much fun. To the point where we're so convinced that they're speaking English to us.
An opportunity, a large-scale study of button communication focusing on dogs.
Our plan of having maybe 100, 200 participants turned into more than 10,000 participants from 47 countries and is the largest animal communication studies ever attempted.
And you know what? You know what you're going to find in the end of this really expensive study? No hypothesis was true.
For several months, Rosano and his team collected and analyzed millions of button pushes and hundreds of hours of video of dogs using them. They also conducted controlled behavioral studies. A first finding from their research, published in August, concludes that dogs can comprehend specific words and can...
Okay, so yeah, there was a study published. How do soundboard trained dogs respond to human button presses? This is very specific. This is essentially the same as how do they respond when a human says, lie down, roll over. It's basically the same thing. They don't understand language until they respond back in a specific way. So this study is only really telling us what we already fucking know.
Offer contextually appropriate responses. But Rosano says that's still a far cry from proving they can use actual human-like language.
I don't see the evidence that the dogs are really understanding language in anything close to the way that you and I are as we talk together here.
Clive Wynne studies dog psychology. He directs the Canine Science Collaboratory at Arizona State University.
I don't think that inside the mind of a dog, there is a human mind desperate to get out. I think inside a dog's head, there's a dog's mind, and a dog's mind has its own ways of communicating.
Yeah, when my dog wants to communicate that she's hungry, she does two things. She nudges my elbow with her snout, or she stands by her food bowl. And it's crystal clear what she wants, that she's hungry.
So that's a beautiful example, William, of how you have learned your dog's language. Your dog has a way of communicating with you about...
Our pets, they already have ways of communicating with us. They already have ways. Don't you, Brooklyn? You already know how to tell me how you're hungry. Or if you want cuddles. Don't you? You already know how to tell me that. And I don't force you into pressing stupid little plastic buttons, do I? Because you know what? I let you be a cat. And what we do is we have that beautiful little relationship between human and cat where we understand each other's body language. And I know that you don't understand a single fucking word I'm saying right now. But what you do understand is my body language. Oh, yeah. In the way that I'm scratching your chin right now and you love it. And you know what else he loves? He He loves being scratched between the shoulder blades. That's what you love, isn't it? Yeah. But he's never going to understand a single fucking word I say.